The lasagna was still warm in my hands when my daughter opened the door and looked at me like I was a stranger selling something she didn't need. I had driven 40 minutes in the rain. I had made the lasagna from scratch, the real kind, with bechamel sauce and fresh basil, the kind that takes 3 hours and dirties every pan in the kitchen. It was her favorite when she was little. She used to sit on the counter and watch me layer the noodles, stealing shreds of mozzarella when she thought I wasn't looking. She was not little anymore. She was 34, and the look on her face standing in that doorway told me she had been expecting someone else, or hoping I wouldn't come at all. Mom. Just the one word. Flat, a statement, not a greeting. Behind her, I could hear voices. Laughter. The particular warm hum of a dinner party already in progress. Glasses clinking, someone telling a story, the smell of garlic bread and something roasting. I recognized my son-in-law's laugh. I recognized my grandchildren's voices. My granddaughter, Lily. No, wait, I need to stop. I'd been using that name for so long in my head that I'd almost forgotten it wasn't hers to give. My granddaughter was in there. 7 years old, probably already at the table with a bread roll in her hand. My grandson too, 5 years old. Loud and wonderful and obsessed with dinosaurs. I had gifts for them in the car. I thought I'd surprise everyone, I said. I held up the lasagna. I made your favorite. She didn't reach for it. Mom, this isn't. She glanced over her shoulder, then back at me. She lowered her voice. This isn't a good time. What do you mean? It's Sunday. We always do Sunday dinner. We do Sunday dinner sometimes. We have people over. I know. I can hear them. Who's here? I'd love to say hello to... Mom. Her voice had an edge now. Not loud. Not rude exactly, but firm in a way that stopped me mid-sentence. This is kind of a private thing tonight. Family and close friends. I stood there in the rain with a lasagna and my heart doing something I didn't have a name for yet. Sweetheart, I said slowly, I'm your mother. She pressed her lips together. She had my eyes, my daughter. Same shape, same color. Looking at her sometimes felt like looking at an old photograph of myself. Familiar and a little painful and very far away. I know, she said, but Dominic's family's here and some of his work friends, and it's his thing tonight. I'm sorry. I should have called you. Dominic, my son-in-law, the man my daughter had married 6 years ago in a beautiful ceremony in Savannah, Georgia, where I had given a toast that made half the room cry. The man whose down payment I had quietly, lovingly contributed to when they bought their house in Marietta. $58,000. Everything I had left in a savings account I'd been adding to since my own mother passed and left me a small inheritance. I hadn't asked for anything in return. I hadn't even asked to be told thank you. I just wanted them to have a good start. I was standing in the rain outside that start. You should have called me, I agreed. My voice came out very steady. I was proud of that. Mom, don't be upset. I'm not upset. This was not true. But I was also not going to cry in this doorway. Go back to your dinner. I'll talk to you later. You're not upset. Go inside, sweetheart. Your guests are waiting. She hesitated. I could tell she wasn't sure whether to be relieved or worried. She chose relieved. People usually do. The door closed. I stood there for another few seconds, just standing in the quiet rain with a warm pan of lasagna and the sound of my grandchildren's voices muffled now behind glass and wood, and whatever it was that had grown up between my daughter and me without my fully noticing. Then I walked back to my car. I sat in the driver's seat for a while without starting the engine. The rain tapped on the roof. Down the street, a neighbor was walking a golden retriever under an umbrella. Normal Saturday evening. Everything exactly as it should be, except for the thing sitting in my chest that felt like a stone. My name is Cecilia. I'm 63 years old. I live 22 minutes from my daughter's house in a 2-bedroom condo I bought after the divorce, when my son had already left for college and it was just me figuring out what the second half of my life was supposed to look like. I'm a retired middle school librarian. I read 4 books a month. I make a good lasagna. I thought I was a good mother. Standing in that rain, I started to wonder if I had been wrong about that last part, or if being a good mother had simply stopped being enough at some point without anyone telling me. I drove home with the lasagna on the passenger seat. I ate 2 slices alone at my kitchen table with a glass of Pinot Grigio and the evening news on in the background, not really watching it. The food was good. The bechamel had come out perfectly. I thought, at least I still have this. I did not sleep well that night. I want to tell you something about my daughter and me before I go any further, because I don't want you to think this came out of nowhere, and I also don't want you to think it was inevitable. The truth is somewhere in the middle, the way truth usually is. We were close when she was growing up, genuinely close, the kind where she would come into the kitchen at 11 at night to talk to me about the boy she liked, or the teacher who had embarrassed her, or the friend who she wasn't sure she trusted anymore. I was the parent she came to. Her father was fine, he was present, but I was the one she wanted when things got hard. Then she met Dominic her second year of college, and something shifted. Not dramatically, not overnight, but gradually, the way a river changes course, 1 inch at a time, and by the time you notice the water is going somewhere different, it's been going that way for years. Dominic came from a different kind of family. His mother, Teresa, was a strong woman who had very clear opinions about how families should be organized. Her family gathered around her. Her traditions were the traditions. Her house was where holidays happened. She was warm and generous, and I had nothing personal against her. I still don't, but I noticed, starting maybe 3 years into their marriage, that my daughter had started organizing her life around Teresa's calendar. Christmases went to Dominic's family. Thanksgivings were split, but split in a way where my half kept getting smaller. The grandchildren's birthdays, I was always invited, but I often found out about the details late, or I'd arrive and find that Teresa had already organized the cake and the games and the photographs, and I would be sitting at a picnic table eating grocery store cake, feeling like a pleasant but unnecessary guest. I told myself I was being sensitive. I told myself families go through adjustments. I told myself my daughter loved me and this was just how things worked out sometimes. I believed that right up until the night she closed the door in my face. The week after the dinner, she called me on Tuesday, casual, like nothing had happened. She talked about the kids, about a problem with her car, about a sale at a home goods store she thought I might like. Not one word about Sunday. I let her talk. I answered in the right places. And when she finally wound down and said, "So how are you, Mom?" I said, "I've been thinking." "About what?" "About things. I'll talk to you soon." And I got off the phone. I sat in my condo, and I thought about $58,000. I thought about the monthly transfers I had been quietly making for the past 2 years. $200 a month into an account I had set up for my grandchildren's college funds, directly funded by me. I thought about the car insurance I was still paying for my daughter because she'd had a rough patch 3 years ago, and I'd taken it on, and somehow we both just kept letting it continue. $167 a month. I thought about the Christmas gifts, the birthday gifts, the spontaneous little things I brought because I loved them. 150 here, 200 there. I thought about all of it. I opened a notepad. I wrote down the numbers. The total, over the past 4 years, not counting the down payment, was a little over $23,000. Small amounts, invisibly woven into their life. Insurance payments, college fund contributions, gifts, a loan for a car repair that had never been repaid, small enough that I had never sat down and added it up. Big enough, when I finally did, that I had to set the notepad down and look out the window for a while. I made an appointment with my financial advisor the following week. Her name is Patricia. No, wait, her name is Sylvia. Sylvia Hargrove, out of an office in Buckhead I'd been going to for 11 years. She was straightforward and good, and she didn't sugarcoat things. I sat across from her desk and I told her everything. The down payment, the monthly transfers, the insurance, the unreturned loan. I watched her face as she did the math. "Cecilia," she said carefully, "I want to ask you something and I need you to answer honestly." She folded her hands on the desk. "Did you consider any of this alone, or was it always a gift in your mind?" I was quiet for a moment. "A gift," I said finally. "I always thought of it as a gift." "Then let me reframe it." She turned her monitor slightly so I could see the screen. Numbers, projections. My retirement timeline overlaid with withdrawals I hadn't accounted for properly. Contributions I had been making from a principal I'd intended to grow, not spend. "Cecilia, your retirement picture is not a disaster. But it is tighter than it should be for a woman your age, especially given that you're looking at Social Security in about 2 years, and your pension will cover roughly 60% of your current expenses." I stared at the screen. "So what does that mean practically?" "It means you need to stop the outflows that aren't essential." She said it gently, but she said it. "The college fund transfers, the insurance payments, those need to end. And you probably need to have a conversation with your daughter about the unreturned loan." I nodded slowly. "What about the down payment?" She looked at me with the kind of patience you reserve for someone who already knows the answer. "Did you get a promissory note? Any written agreement?" "No." "Then for legal and practical purposes, that's a gift. It's gone." She paused. "What I'd focus on is making sure nothing else leaves your account that shouldn't." I drove home in a different kind of quiet than the one from the rainy Saturday. This was not the quiet of hurt feelings. This was the quiet of understanding fully what had actually happened. Not all at once, slowly, through the fog of loving someone, I had handed over a significant portion of my financial security, and the person I had handed it to had recently stood in a warm doorway and told me, politely but clearly, that tonight wasn't really for me. That was the night I started making decisions. The first thing I did was call the insurance company. I told them I needed to remove my daughter from my auto insurance policy. They asked a few questions. I answered them. By the end of the call, my monthly bill had dropped. I transferred the difference to my own savings. The second thing I did was pause the college fund contributions. I set up the transfers to hold for 90 days while I decided what I actually wanted to do. My grandchildren were 7 and 5. There was time to figure this out properly. Right now, I needed to see the whole picture clearly before I moved money anywhere. The third thing took me longer. I sat at my kitchen table for almost 2 hours one evening with a piece of paper and a pen, trying to write a text to my daughter and throwing away draft after draft. Too angry, too passive, too long, too cryptic. I finally settled on something simple. "I need to talk to you about some practical matters. Can we find a time this week?" She called me the next morning, which surprised me. Usually she texts back. "Mum, is everything okay? Are you sick?" "I'm fine. I'm healthy." I sat in my reading chair with my coffee. "I've been doing some financial housekeeping, and there are a few things we need to discuss." A beat. Financial housekeeping. "I've been paying your car insurance for 3 years. Silence. Long enough that I could hear her breathing. Yeah, I know. Mom, I've meant to take that back over. Things have just been. I've already removed you from my policy. It happened this week." I said it calmly. Not cold, but clear. "You'll need to set up your own coverage before the end of the month." More silence. Then okay. "I'm also pausing the transfers to the kids' college accounts for now. I need to reassess some things." "Mom, that's okay. What is going on? Why are you doing this?" And there it was. The same question, worded almost identically, that her husband had probably asked in the kitchen after she told him the insurance was gone. "Why are you doing this?" I breathed in slowly. I thought about the rainy Saturday and the warm door and the lasagna going cold. "I came to your house 2 weeks ago," I said. I made you your favorite dinner and drove 40 minutes in the rain and stood on your porch, and you told me it wasn't a good night, that it was for family. The silence this time was different, heavier. Mum, I'm not angry, I said, and I meant it. I was past angry, had moved through angry into something quieter and more serious. But I think we have both been operating under some assumptions that need to be revisited. I've been contributing to your family's life in ways that felt natural to me because I love you. But I realize I haven't been thoughtful enough about whether those contributions were being received the way I meant them. What does that mean? It means I'd like to sit down with you and talk, just the two of us, not on the phone. She agreed. It took us a week to find a time. She had Dominic's family thing on Saturday and her book club on Wednesday, and the kids had soccer. But we finally settled on a Thursday morning at a coffee shop near her house. I arrived first. I ordered a tea. I watched the door. She came in looking like she hadn't slept well either, which I noticed and felt a complicated thing about. She was still my daughter. She still had my eyes. Even when she was making me feel invisible, she was also the person I had held in a hospital in Atlanta in February of 1990 and felt my whole life change. We sat across from each other with our drinks and neither of us spoke for a moment. I'm sorry about that night, she said finally. I should have called you. I knew you sometimes came on Sundays and I should have given you a heads up. Why didn't you? She looked at her cup. Because Dominic had planned the dinner and he wanted it to be his family and his friends, and I didn't want to make it complicated. By inviting your mother. By having a conversation about it. I let that land. Your mother versus your husband's comfort. That's what we're talking about. It's not. She stopped, tried again. It's not that simple. No, I agreed. It's not. But I want to understand it, because what happened that night made me feel like a stranger. And then I sat down and looked at some numbers, and I realized that while I've been feeling like a stranger at the door, I've also been acting like a stranger at the door. I've also been acting like a partner in your finances. She flushed. The money stuff is separate from... It's not separate to me. I said it gently. I gave you the down payment for your house because I wanted you to have security. That was freely given. But I've also been paying your insurance and contributing to your children's college funds, and there's still the matter of the $2,200 from the car repairs 2 years ago. I watched her face. I'm not asking for all of it back. I'm asking us to be honest with each other about what's been happening. She was quiet for a long time. Outside, a couple walked by with a stroller. A barista called out an order. The world continued its ordinary business. I've let Dominic run things a lot, she said at last. I know that. It's easier sometimes. He has strong opinions about family, and I go along. I know. I didn't realize how much until that night, when I closed the door and then came back inside and thought about what I'd just done. She looked up at me. Her eyes were wet. You brought lasagna. I did. I didn't even let you come in. You didn't. She pressed a hand over her eyes. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm really sorry. There's no excuse for that. I don't care how Dominic planned the evening. You're my mother. You should have been in that room. Something loosened in my chest. Something I hadn't realized I'd been holding tight for 2 weeks, or maybe longer. I need you to hear me, I said, not because I want to punish you, not because I'm trying to threaten anything, but because I need to know that I matter to my own daughter, that I'm not just a resource. You're not. Her voice broke a little. You're not a resource. You're my mum. We sat there for a while, ordered more drinks. The conversation moved, slowly, toward what we both wanted. She wanted her mother. I wanted my daughter. The real one, not the polite imposter who called me on Tuesdays to talk about car trouble. We talked about Dominic, carefully. We talked about Teresa, more carefully still. We talked about the insurance and the college accounts and the car loan, and she agreed to take responsibility for the insurance, to repay the car money over 6 months. and to have a real conversation with her husband about what it meant that his mother was always at the center and I was always at the edge. She didn't promise everything would change overnight. I didn't ask her to. What I asked was simple: don't close the door again. That was 4 months ago. I won't pretend it's been a perfect transformation, because life doesn't work that way, and I'm too old to believe in perfect transformations. There have been awkward Sundays and one very tense dinner where Dominic was clearly unhappy about something and nobody said what it was, and a week in March where my daughter and I went quiet on each other for reasons that were nobody's fault exactly. But she calls me differently now, not just to fill time, not just to talk about sales and car trouble. Last month, she called me on a Wednesday at 9 in the evening just to talk, the way she used to when she was young, and we stayed on the phone for almost 2 hours. I told her about the book I was reading. She told me she'd been thinking about going back to school. We talked about her grandmother, my mother, things neither of us had spoken of in years. The car insurance is in her name. She sent me the 6-month payments for the car loan, each one on time, without me ever having to ask again. I restarted the college fund contributions in March. Not because I had to, but because I chose to, with clear eyes, as a grandmother who wants to and can. Not as a woman bleeding herself out trying to earn her place in a family she already belongs to. I have not been to a family dinner at their house since the rainy Saturday, not yet, but she has brought the children to my condo 3 Sundays in a row. And last week, my grandson sat on my kitchen counter and watched me make bechamel sauce and stole shreds of mozzarella when he thought I wasn't looking. He has my daughter's eyes. I laughed and I didn't say anything about the stolen mozzarella because some things are worth keeping. There is a version of this story where I stayed silent, where I kept paying, kept showing up, kept smoothing everything over and swallowing every hurt, and told myself it was love. I know that woman. I was that woman for a long time. She was very tired. What I know now, at 63, standing in my own kitchen with the smell of lasagna in the air and my grandchildren's shoes by the door, is this: love that only flows in one direction isn't love, it's charity. And I have too few years left, too little money to spare, and too much self-respect accumulated over too long a life to keep mistaking charity for love. My name is Cecilia. I came to the door with something warm in my hands, and I got sent away. And instead of knocking again and again until they let me in, I went home and figured out what I actually had to offer, and to whom and why. That was the best decision I ever made. I still think about the weight of that lasagna pan in my hands. Warm through the dish towel, 40 minutes of driving, 3 hours of cooking, and a door that closed quietly in my face like I was nothing more than an inconvenience. For a long time, I told myself that what happened between my daughter and me was complicated, that there were no real villains, that love was messy and families were imperfect and I just needed to be patient. I believed that so hard and for so long that I stopped noticing what I was actually doing, which was making myself smaller and smaller to fit into a space that kept shrinking anyway. What I understand now is that what I did with my money was just a mirror of what I was doing with myself. Every insurance payment I kept making without asking for anything back. Every college fund transfer that went out quietly without acknowledgement. Every loan that turned into a gift because I didn't want to create friction. All of it was me saying, I don't matter quite as much as keeping the peace does. And the people in my life received that message clearly, even if I never said it out loud. That's the part nobody tells you about cause and effect. It isn't always dramatic. It doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just accumulates, one small surrender at a time, until one rainy Saturday evening you are standing on your own daughter's porch, being told you don't belong at the table. What changed for me wasn't the anger. Anger came and went. What changed was the moment I sat across from Sylvia in that Buckhead office and finally looked at the numbers with clear eyes. That took something I had been avoiding for years, the willingness to see things as they actually were, not as I wanted them to be. I had to be honest enough with myself to admit that my generosity had become a way of buying proximity to people who should have been close to me simply because I was their mother. That kind of honesty is hard. It doesn't feel like strength when you're doing it. It feels like loss. But then something else happened. I made a decision, a quiet one, sitting alone at my kitchen table. I stopped the outflows that were draining me. I picked up the phone and had the conversation I had been avoiding for 3 years. And I showed up to that coffee shop not to beg for my place in my daughter's life, but to simply tell the truth about what I needed. That took more out of me than any amount of money ever did. What I know at 63, that I did not know at 43, is that real love requires all three things at once. It requires the decency to tell the truth even when the truth is uncomfortable. To say, "You hurt me, and this isn't right." It requires the clarity to understand your own situation honestly, to look at the numbers, the patterns, the years of quiet accommodation, and call them what they are. And it requires the steadiness to keep going after the hard conversation, to not collapse when your daughter cries, to not immediately undo everything you've decided just to make the discomfort stop. Cecilia made it to the other side of that door, not by knocking harder, by going home, taking stock of what she had, and deciding it was worth protecting. My grandson steals mozzarella from the cutting board now, and I let him, and that small, ordinary moment is worth more to me than $58,000 ever was. I got it back, not the money, but the thing I had actually been paying for all along.